at Mines and Money in Toronto. We're with Justin Cochrane, President and Chief Operating Officer of Cobalt 27. Justin, thank you for joining us here.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so before we talk about Cobalt 27, let's talk about your experience in the industry and why you're someone we want to talk to about financing and streaming.
So, I started my career as an investment banker for a decade, and then back in 2010 joined a company called Sandstorm Gold. And Sandstorm is one of the world's largest gold royalty and streaming companies, and I ran their corporate development group for about 5 years. And then 2 years ago left Sandstorm Gold and started putting the pieces together for Cobalt 27.
Right. Now Cobalt 27, it had the largest offering of 220 million, I believe.
Yeah, just over 200 million. Yeah, largest IPO in Canada since mining IPO in Canada since 2012.
Right. So what does that mean right now? What's the standing of the company?
So we, at Cobalt 27, we've got the largest physical holding of cobalt in the world outside of the Chinese government that we're aware of. And so it's 2,160 metric tons of cobalt, which is worth about $180 million Canadian.
Right, so what does that mean for investors? I mean, obviously that's a reason to invest, but what other factors about the company should we believe in?
What we're trying to do is give investors a direct levered way of playing the electric vehicle theme and cobalt in particular. So we built the physical position in order to provide investors with that direct access to price movements in cobalt. And one of the challenges in the cobalt space in particular is there isn't really a lot of ways to invest in cobalt, and even the electric vehicle theme as well. And so we built a unique vehicle that gave investors, and in particular those retail and institutional investors, that way of buying into cobalt and the electric vehicle.
Right, now when you look at cobalt pricing, what sorts of insight can you offer for our retail investors who might not have the same sort of view that you get access to?
Yeah, so you're right. Cobalt is an opaque market. It's not like gold and silver and precious and other base metals. It's priced through the London Metals Exchange. So it's a group called Metals Bulletin that does a journalistic approach of price discovery. They report pricing twice a week on Wednesday and Friday, and that's what we use as our form of pricing, the Cobalt 27.
Okay, gotcha. Now let's talk about recycling. Is it a threat?
Yes.
Is it a threat to cobalt, the demand that you're facing at this time?
So not at all. There's about 4,000 to 6,000 tons of recycled cobalt a year today. I think the more likely scenario that you'll see with recycled cobalt is, and in particular recycled batteries, is they'll have a second life inside a wind farm, a solar farm, where it might spend 10 years in a Tesla and only have 60% of its capacity, but at the end of that 10 years, it's a free battery that can now be used as grid storage. And you're going to see the storage, and in particular the grid storage, change over the next couple of decades, where lithium-ion batteries are going to be a key part of that. And recycling in particular is very expensive to do. It would be like me handing you a loaf of bread and asking you to give me back the flour. It's very, very difficult, very complex, and very expensive. So yes, it'll always be a part of the market, but it's not a threat to the overall cobalt market.
Now China is leading the cobalt market, but give me some insight. Why not partner with the Chinese? Or am I wrong? Are there lots of partnerings going on with the Chinese? Why not work with them to get ahead for Canadians and Americans?
It's true. So China is, they produce about 80% of the world's refined cobalt. Most of, if not all of the material that's produced in the DRC finds its way into China. They're the leading battery manufacturer, of course. If you look at the gigafactories and megafactories that are being built around the world, I think 10 of the 13 are in China or Korea. So there's tons of opportunity to partner, and frankly, we're dealing with weekly inquiries to that regard. That being said, there's also lots of opportunity outside of China. So we're at Cobalt 27. We're flexible. We're looking around the world, mostly at nickel projects around the world, and focusing on those producing assets that are producing cobalt today.
Yeah, and tell me, why focus on nickel mines?
So nickel, when you think about cobalt, 99% of cobalt's produced as a byproduct of copper and nickel production. It's really copper in the DRC and nickel everywhere else. And so in the DRC, you've got Glencore, who's obviously the dominant player in cobalt, and a bunch of other players as well, the Chinese in particular. But the DRC, we think, is a difficult place to focus a lot of our investment capital, just given power and political concerns. So, and if you go outside of the DRC, it really is nickel projects. And so we're focusing on those nickel projects. We've spoken to every major producer of cobalt over the last year to 15 months, and are hoping to get something done in the as part of a cobalt stream in the near future.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.